Good morning. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all doing a lot better than I am. It is currently 6:35 here in Anchorage, Alaska, and I've been awake for the last 3 hours. I am nowhere close to having normalized sleep. My travel arrangements were an absolute disaster. Showed up to the airport 2 hours early. I have basically found out that my new manager, my old boss Hans, rather surprising to me, has quickly retired. I think a lot of that had to do with his health and also the disaster that was North Carolina with the flooding, and also he's dealing with a lot of stuff. And so apparently, this John Henry guy that I've complained about in the past, he's now my new manager. And sort of the way I found out about this was I showed up to the airport apparently 3 hours too early because Shit for Brains changed my flight arrangements, changed my hotel, changed my rental car, and the only thing I was able to fix was my hotel arrangements. I'm not staying at an Econo Lodge on the outskirts of town. So instead of flying United from like my local airport to Dulles to Alaska, instead I had to fly from my local airport to Atlanta to Chicago to Seattle to um, Anchorage, Alaska. And of course, I don't know what the deal is, but whenever I fly Delta, there's always issues. That was very irritating. I ended up spending enough time on the runway because of mechanical issues that I'm filing a complaint with the federal government over this. Simply because when you make me sit on a plane for over 3 hours and cause a delay for over 3 hours as a U.S. citizen, I'm allowed to file a complaint, and Delta better is supposed to actually compensate me for this. And giving me a bag of Sun Chips is not sufficient compensation for this. And of course, my rental car is not a full size vehicle, it is a Toyota Corolla. My knees go pretty much almost over the steering wheel. Like, I feel like I'm in a flipping clown car. I'm just more than pissed. Every single one of my airplane seats was coach all the way in the back. I was constantly having to deal with airline stewardesses who are like, "Sir, you can't have your legs in the aisle." To which I just look at them, going, "Explain to me how physics work. How I can't break my legs, lady." So I'm not in a good mood. I tried to get a hold of John. Apparently, he doesn't answer his phone unless it's business hours, which that's not really what his job's supposed to be. And based on his lack of response to me, I am 99% sure that when I show up to this, I don't even know what it is, lead, copper, whatever freaking mine this is that I gotta fly 3 hours north to. I got a feeling that the end user is gonna. They've probably been dealing with him more than I have, and I'm certain that I'm gonna be getting an earful from them about John. Uh, he's also already denied my expense account from Nippon Steel, trying to say that I need to pay for the two laptops that I had to buy off the shelf because our IT department bricked my work laptop and then the backup laptop that I had to buy on site. He's trying to say that those are personal expenses. So he's like, "Yeah, Mike, when you get a chance, when you're in the office, we got to get on the same page." I'm like, "Yes, yes, we will." Like, schedule it. Not this Monday, but the very next Monday. Schedule it. You and I at your desk. We will get on the same page. So we'll see if I have a job in 2 weeks' time. I know a lot of people always imagine that it's like, you can't lose me, I'm so important to this company kind of thing. I am literally their only field engineer that works across all industries with the exception of solar. So when I say they can't afford to lose me, they legitimately can't afford to lose me. I'm just really, really annoyed that I'm dealing with a former HR manager who is now in charge of me, who doesn't know his ass from a synchronous motor, has no concept of what I do, seems to think that whenever I travel, I'm getting a free vacation, doesn't answer his phone 24/7, which, hey, motherfricker, you might not like being woken up in your own bed because I got to call you up or a customer's got to call you up, but that's what you signed up for. I got to do that. I got to take phone calls from China, and I'm in Alaska. Like, I don't want to hear it. So we'll see. Give me 1 second. I apologize. I'm still sick as a dog. I don't want to be blowing my nose and coughing into my microphone because that's rude to you. So I have to blow off steam. And since I'm no longer in my 20s, I don't just go into a bad neighborhood and get into a fist fight with people. So instead, I'm going to review Pat's tweets and laugh at them because I need some humor in my life right now. I did, on a positive, I did get to have a nice, like, hour and a half long conversation with my wife and my son this morning. My wife was like, "What time is it there?" I was like, "It's 4 a.m." She's like, "Good Lord, why are you up?" It's like, "Babe, it's the same reason why when we visit your parents in Poland, we're not on the same sleep schedule as they are." So, no, I'm just dealing with this. It's been like 4 weeks since I've seen my wife, so I'm just very very annoyed. And it'd be one thing if I was just doing one job. It'd be one thing if I was just doing one job, but like I've literally done job assignments in 2 different countries, 3 different U.S. states. I don't even know how many time zones I've been in. I'm fairly certain that in the last 3 weeks, I have circumnavigated the entire effing globe. If you go by pure distance that I've had to travel. And I'm not in the mood to deal with a moron that doesn't understand anything. Excuse me. Sorry, I meant to stop or catch that. So I'm going to pause the video, recording, I should say, and then scroll until I find a tweet that I want to talk about. I think one of the most fascinating things about this election, and again, I say this as somebody where I don't give a shit who the president is. I can't mentally get invested in it. To me, this is like two people giving a crap over who wins a cricket match in Bangladesh. Just doesn't affect me. The Trump election allies broke into electronic voting machines and stole the software, uploaded it to thumb drives, and walked out. People went to prison for it, but no one ever talked about what was done with the stolen software. Pat's an idiot. Pat doesn't really know how data works, and so on. But on top of this, it's absolutely fascinating to me how the conspiracy theories about voter fraud has completely flipped on its head to where now it's people towards left of center that are all buying into the dumbest conspiracy theories, whereas before it was people right of center. It's the same shit, only now it's the other side. It's like two sides of the same stupid coin. So again, for somebody like me, I don't get why anybody gets emotional about this. And Pat is going full bore into all kinds of really, really dumb conspiracy theories. Patrick retweeting people, and this is one of those things now it's coming out with people left to center. They're like, oh, I hope these Muslims look forward to this. This is what you voted for. I have to point out the fact that the Harris campaign, or the Biden administration at the very least, and of course, Harris went out repeatedly and effectively said, my foreign policy is pro-ethnic cleansing of the Middle East for Israel's. It's all of this whole thing going on in Israel right now is because Netanyahu was found guilty of corruption, numerous corruption cases, and his appeal went all the way up to the Israeli Supreme Court. And what ended up happening was it's sort of similar to what's going on with Trump, where the Supreme Court ruled, yes, he's guilty, yes, he has to go to prison. However, we don't have any kind of machinations or any kind of policy as a country in which a sitting prime minister goes to prison. So he cannot be forced to serve his time until he's out of office. This is why you will never see anything going on in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria will stop. It will not stop until eventually Netanyahu kicks the bucket. He will do whatever is necessary to never go to prison. All the horrible things that people claim Trump is, Netanyahu is all of that and more. I firmly believe that the entire reason why shit kicked off in Gaza was because Netanyahu was facing organized, constant protests by a large segment of Israeli society to call for snap elections. This was getting domestically untenable for him. And it always seems to happen that in Gaza, stuff kicks off whenever Netanyahu hits a domestic political crisis. If you look at it, every single time he was facing calls for him to either step down or there was pressures for elections to occur, that's when a new intifada kicked off. And Israel's Mossad has completely and utterly infiltrated all of the insurgent groups. They're very good at what they do. They're very organized. So I firmly believe that a shitload of Israeli citizens were killed, and a, a horrific number of of civilians, Palestinian Christians and Muslims, were killed, and a bunch of conscripts for the IDF were killed so that Netanyahu could maintain power because he's done this kind of crap before. But the idea that somehow things are going to be worse for Palestinians under Trump versus Harris is ludicrous. It's like arguing between a slow genocide and a slightly not so slow genocide. It's the same thing. And we're going to still keep just funneling ungodly amounts of money into maintaining a failed political state in Israel. It is a failed political state. I've worked there numerous times. It's in a tremendously fractured society. It's it's a mess. It's a real mess, even when there aren't rockets being fired at civilian targets and so on. Israel's a goddamn mess, and it always has been, and it always will be. The Middle East will always be a mess. We have no legitimate reasons to be so involved in the Middle East whatsoever. And for anyone to say, well, the Suez, we need the Suez for trade. We don't. Europe does. We don't. We have two oceans. We do not have to ship stuff through the Suez. We legitimately don't. So it shouldn't be our responsibility to be world police. But that's just my opinion. So like this is a tweet that I think it was at the airport or something. I saw it. I took a screenshot and I just tweeted kind of like a reply because of course Pat has me blocked. What Pat is suggesting people do here would absolutely get them facing 20 years in prison and like six figures worth of fines. You would lose your passport. You wouldn't be able to travel internationally and so on. I'm sorry, excuse me. Um, Stuff like org charts, employee manuals, policies and procedures, and studies. If there is a security clearance involved and they retain that, they absolutely will be found guilty of and be on the receiving end of some pretty severe punishments. I used to have a security clearance. I had a higher security clearance than Jackie did. I'm not going to go into why I did or what I did because that in itself could get me in trouble. And I sure as hell could not keep souvenirs from my job and so on. Now, when Jackie says she has a security clearance working as a mechanic for the Army, that's one of the aspects of her background that I absolutely believe. The reason is the U.S. military now they put a security clearance on everything now. Like secret, everything's got a secret. So the MRAP manuals that Jackie probably had to get trained on so that she could potentially one day work deployed, which I never think she actually did because she wasn't on active duties long enough to ever get deployed. Um, they would all have to, she would have to get a secret security clearance for it. And this in itself has caused a major issue. Since so much stuff has a secret security clearance on it, they had to develop the SIPRnet. Then anybody who has access to the SIPRnet has way too much access to stuff that they really don't need to have. And this is, of course, what Manning did a data dump from. And what's funny is Pat has gone on record basically saying that Manning should have been executed for that. When Manning did it, Patrick was pro. But then once Trump was in office, Patrick was bringing up like that Snowden guy and Manning as two individuals that should be executed for violating security clearances and stuff. It's amazing. One election, they just like all of a sudden everything changes, kind of thing. But this would be an absolute terrible idea for anybody to actually do. Of course, they shouldn't do it. It's not worth it. And of course, I'm sure there are people like, okay, why is that a big deal? Well, obviously, CIA, FBI, you're talking about investigating, like especially the FBI. Like you're potentially talking about some knucklehead collecting child sex abuse material. If that FBI agent was involved in investigating those kind of crimes. Side note, I know this. I'm not going to go into why I know this. When you go into the FBI and you graduate from Quantico, they basically tell you what job you're going to do. So if it gets determined, if they just come down and say you're going to do bank robberies, and that's what you're going to do for 20 years, you don't get a choice. You're going to go into business, like corporate fraud and so on and so on and so on. The one the one area in which, if you're an FBI agent, you have to volunteer for is if you go into the stuff that involves children. And those people are very, very difficult to replace because it's like every single day you're dealing with that kind of stuff. I can't even imagine having a job like that. I really can't. CIA, you're talking about people collecting confidential informants and all kinds of stuff. That's a terrible idea. Uh, NASA, that has dual usage technology, so you're talking about military hardware and stuff. Even the NOAA, depending on what you collect, that could require significant security clearances and stuff to have. So this is not stuff that you want to encourage people to actually have on their personal computers and stuff. And 20 years ago, I would have said, well, nobody's that stupid. But then Manning, you know, Manning's a prime example of somebody that when I'm going to just use she, I'm not going to I really don't give a shit if people are offended that, like, I refer to her as her. Manning's a moron. She's a complete shithead. It's kind of one of the reasons why she kind of disappeared because she's an idiot. But she just did a raw data dump. She didn't even understand half the stuff that she was dumping. And a lot of people, they make it sound like when a Democrat was in office, people like Trump, or I'm sorry, people like Patrick made it sound like it was no big deal, nobody got hurt. In reality, the data dumps that she released included the embassy cables and stuff, and that revealed a lot of the corruption that was going on in the Middle East, corruption that the U.S. government knew about, and so on. But it is what it is. And this is what really launched the Green Revolution in Northern Africa and parts of the Middle East, where there were severe, brutal crackdowns and stuff. So a lot of people got killed over this. I'm not necessarily saying that it's good that we're involved with these countries diplomatically. I think it's one of those things, it's a reality of the world. But it did result in people getting killed. So, yeah, copied and saved in more places is better. Like, oh God, Pat, you're so stupid. Yeah, yeah, he's an idiot. I just saw this one. I am technically married to a woman that was born in Poland. This thing that the judge struck down was where it was for people that were married to folks that had been living in the country for over 10 years and they had done nothing to normalize their immigration or visa status kind of thing. I think a lot of people imagine that, and I'm sure Dan, if he ever feels like opening up about it, he doesn't have to, of course. I think a lot of people imagine that the way the visa system works for married couples, it's like the movies and TVs where it's like, oh, they just have to marry an American. They're naturally a citizen, like it automatically. There's nothing that you have to go through, none of the paperwork or anything. That's not what it's like at all. Like there is a set procedure on how to do these things, and it's well documented. So I do feel bad for folks that are caught in on this, but it's also one of those things where it's like you've been here for over a decade. You've been here for over a decade. Come on. I don't know if this is like something where like Pat drinks so much that he isn't able to form and retain memories long term. This could be a sign of frontal lobe damage. I don't know how we're in uncharted territory when Trump has already been president for 4 years. Am I missing something? Like maybe I don't know. What's funny is like this is just of course Pat retweet. I have seen this Malcolm P. Johnson guy tweet shit out all the fucking time. Where like it was very obvious if you follow any of these I guess, influencers on the left. They are just as reactionary as influencers on the right. And it's really amazing to me how very quickly the thinly veiled racism has just gone full out because they didn't win an election that they wanted. Um, Palestinians weren't going to be allowed to return to their homes anyway, because again, the Harris administration, like, well, I shouldn't say the Harris administration, but Harris was running on a foreign policy in which we would continue to fund the IDF and is the Israeli government no matter what, with no restrictions on what they did. So it was basically a foreign policy based on funding ethnic cleansing, and it's the same thing that Trump was running on. So it's like, so this idea that a small minority group of voters in Dearborn, Michigan are the reason why Harris lost the general election, and like not just the electoral college, but also the popular vote. I mean, like, again, this kind of, there are simply that not that many people in Dearborn, Michigan, especially Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan. It's so stupid, but this gives this guy an excuse to just to champion the fact that Muslim and Christian Palestinians are going to be slaughtered and forced out of their homes. Pat, are you sure that you're down $1,400 since Tuesday night due to the election, or maybe I don't know, maybe Twitter is just finally trying to do something to address the massive number of porn bots and stuff that are on this website. I don't know about anyone else. I spend more time blocking, or I'm sorry, yeah, blocking obvious bots, advertising bots, porn bots, and so on, than anything else on this stupid website. If I probably, if I didn't bother doing that, I would probably have about 10 times the number of followers. Like, for every legitimate follower I get easily, I get easily like 20 or 30 just random spam bots showing up. So, oh yes, like this person here is like, there were bots created to interfere with the election and now being taken down. And then Pat, of course, will not acknowledge that his follower base is probably predominantly made up of bots. Because again, I have to point out the fact that like Pat has a huge number of followers, and this tweet alone got one comment, 5 retweets, and 46 likes. It's like, I can make a fart joke about Pat, tweet that out, and I pretty much get the same over here and maybe half of the likes because I have a lot smaller of a number of followers. Because again, I intentionally block the porn bots and stuff that just automatically like all your shit. Rambo Pat never gets old. Really never gets old. Although, really, if there's anything I would hope that in this country we would stop doing, and this is true for both sides. If you're left of center, if you're right of center, let's stop advocating or celebrating the idea of political violence, of an upcoming civil war, and so on. Because again, the average American would not actually be able to handle being a part of an insurgency or a crackdown on an insurgency. You'd have to eat your pets. You would have to drink rainwater. You would probably die of dysentery, and you would have to shit in a hole that you dug in the ground. And the average American can't do that because the average American is brutally, brutally soft. Just look how much people flip out if they can't get onto their favorite website or if their power goes out for longer than a half an hour. The idea that the Washington Post and the LA Times not coming out and endorsing Harris is the reason why Harris lost the popular vote is so beyond moronic. I can't even fathom it. Who in Oklahoma is going, well, shit. The LA Times says I should vote for her. I guess I'm voting for her. Like, it's just stupid. It's really, really, really stupid. People voted because, primarily, I think, is because of inflation hit them so hard. I really think that that was the big thing. Hey, Pat almost has self-awareness. Um, I firmly believe that Donald Trump's not going to follow through with pretty much any of his campaign promises because he didn't follow through the last time he was president. I don't even think he's going to follow through on the promise to pardon the January Sixers. I don't think that's ever going to happen. If you want a pardon from Trump, you better give him a shitload of money. So, if you're some old guy or old lady that got sucked into the crowd and you got arrested January 6th, you're screwed. But if you're like an Atlanta-based rapper who was accused on multiple RICO charges of organizing the murder of 6 people or whatever it was, yeah, Trump's your huckleberry as long as your record company's check clears, kind of thing. So, like, I don't believe he's going to be able to do the tariff thing. I think that's going to be a disaster. Give me 1 second. I want to look something up. Yeah, I was just checking. I don't know if you guys all remember this, but right around the election, there was the East Coast port strike, and that lasted for maybe 48 hours. And like, that's a big deal. That's a huge, huge, huge deal because it affects every single port from Maine all the way down to Texas. That strike was pushed, the can was kicked down the road. It's not been resolved. It hasn't been resolved. There was a temporary deal put in place until after the election. In January, that's when it kicks off again. This is probably going to be like a test case for putting in. I would argue they should treat this like a test case for if they want to put in tariffs, because tariffs are going to be doubly, because tariffs will affect both the East Coast and the West Coast ports. So probably wondering, well, why can't they just fire all those people and get rid of them? Get rid of the Teamsters. You just fire them, get rid of them. Well, for one thing, for any replacement, they have to have a TWIC card, a transit worker identification card. I think that's what TWIC stands for. I have one. I just don't know what the acronym stands for. Getting a TWIC card is not easy. It's a pretty in-depth process because you got to do a security clearance, background check, da 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 da. And everybody going in and out of a U.S. port has to have them. And then on top of this, some ports, like say NIT, Norfolk International Terminal, you have a further clearance by the U.S. government because it's right up against NOB, which is Norfolk Operation Base, largest naval facility in the entire world. So if you get rid of all the Teamsters, you basically get rid of every single uh, person that currently has a TWIC, with the exception of like the engineers and stuff and the managers. That's catastrophic. It's absolutely catastrophic. You can't operate the cranes. You can't even perform maintenance on the cranes, and these cranes need constant maintenance. And the workforce has to be highly trained. These are people that have to be certified to be heavy equipment operators, like forklifts, like very, very large. We're not talking about little baby forklifts. We're talking about huge forklifts and stuff to be able to lift up spreaders and stuff to do work on the hydraulics. You have to have people that are good at working with electronics, variable frequency drives, electric motors, all different kinds of PLCs, aka programmable logic controllers, because you can have a port that has like 18 different vendors when it comes to the PLCs. So that's all different kinds of programming logic and language and stuff. These folks have to know this stuff. On top of this, you'd have to be willing to climb up around 400 feet and work on stuff at extreme heights. It takes a very, very well trained workforce with security background checks and paperwork to work in very, very unideal conditions. If you want to make more money an hour than me, without ever bothering to get a high school or without ever bothering to get a college degree, get a job as a key crane operator for a U.S. port. You'll make more money an hour than me. You'll also be sitting in a chair for 12 hours at a time. There's no bathroom up there. You better be able to piss and shit into the same Gatorade bottle. And you'll be shaking back and forth while staring down 400 feet to the ground through your feet, because it's a glass bottom so you can see what you're doing, in 50 knot mile per hour wind. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. I don't like doing port jobs. Because when I'm on a crane that's in operation, it's incredibly unsettling. It's really unnerving. You can't replace those people. They know it. Ports know it. Government knows it. If the ports owners could have replaced these guys, they would have done it in the 1970s, and they can't do it. They can't do it. So this is going to be a brutal, drag out, nasty fight in which the ports are going to have to basically back down and give the longshoremen what they want, which is to protect jobs. They, that has always been their hard line in the sand. You will not take a single job. Ports don't want that. Now, do not for a second try to pretend that these poor little ports are struggling for cash and money and stuff. If you want to put money into your retirement, that's very, very safe with almost a guaranteed return, invest in a U.S. port. They make money hand over fist. They always will because everything has to go in and out of a U.S. port. If if you're going into the world's largest economy, but this is going to be a big, big, big issue. This is going to be the biggest issue, regardless of whether it was Trump or Harris coming in, and it's happening in January, and no one's talking about it because no one wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to. The temporary strike was less than 48 hours, and it grinded things to a halt. Grinded things to a halt in just 24 hours. This is going to be big. This is not going to end anytime soon. And this is one of those things that presidential bluster is not going to solve. These are going to be very intense negotiations. And these longshoremen, they make good money. This is not like one of those things where it's like, well, we'll just starve out the workers at this one steel mill. These are some of the highest paid people on the planet, and they're going to be able to. Their unions are very. They keep war chests, significant war chests. So they're going to be able to hold out for what they want. It's going to get ugly, and it's going to be a challenge for whoever was going to be president. And it never came up on the campaign trail because nobody wanted to talk about it. So that'll be interesting to see. That's going to happen in January. And I have a feeling that once the fallout from that happens in January, there's going to be no talk about any tariffs. Because again, tariffs affect all the ports. This is just going to affect the ports from Maine down to Texas. It's going to be ugly. Pat, what would help your sleep is if you didn't drink so much. That's probably one of the things that I noticed when I finally got sober. Like, I can't imagine if I was still doing my job now, drinking at the rate that I was. So, I would really recommend, Pat, that you stop drinking, go to therapy. I'm a big believer in therapy. I'm not, I get a little annoyed when people like use therapy as like an insult to others. I think it's something that can help everybody. It's the entire reason why I'm able to function. It's the entire reason why I'm still married and I have a kid. This is, I think I explained in my last video. My brain doesn't quite work due to my childhood, like the way a normal person's does. And it's why I'm able to talk to people. It's why I didn't get on a plane and fly all the way back to my home city as soon as I landed and beat that John Henry guy half to death. Because I've worked along with multiple therapists on how to talk through things, and I've learned how to handle emotions and learned how to handle interacting with people and stuff so much. But like Pat, I really recommend that you try therapy. I also recommend that you ghost the internet for a while, and I recommend you start eating right and exercising. And I would also recommend that you get like a normal job that's not on the internet, not doing that mid-level marketing shit, targeting elderly people in Florida for insurance that they don't need. Get a job where you're interacting with people for real in real life, in an office setting or something like that, not a bar. Interacting with people in a bar, Pat, is not the same as having normal conversations with people. And I think you'd be a lot healthier and a lot happier. I legitimately think that. I think a lot of the people that are on Twitter right now that are like flipping out and pulling their hair out and stuff, and also a lot of the people that are celebrating this election, like the U.S. just won World War III or whatever. These are people that just they don't have normal releases and interactions and so on with the rest of society. Everything is just online and stuff. It's weird to me to say this because I'm a person with antisocial personality disorder. So I naturally, by default, have an incredibly small circle of people that I'm willing to interact with. And I'm fairly certain that I have a larger social network of people that I consider to be important to me and I regularly check in with than Pat does. And I have to travel all over the world on the drop of a hat. It's kind of crazy when you really think about it. Crazier than me. That's supposed to be a joke. I don't know if it's a joke, but it was supposed to be a joke. Well, Margie, you can actually look it up. There were less enlisted personnel involved in January 6th than probably insurance agents. Very few people. Very, very few fucking people. Like, this is what Pat, the average military member, no, they're not going to do an illegal order. They're not. They're just not. Nobody wants to serve time in prison for Abu Ghraib. Like that was one of those things you would imagine that a lot of veterans and stuff would have been upset about the people being prosecuted for Abu Ghraib. I was not. They should have known better. We had a whole series of trials in Nuremberg about how you can't just use the I was just following orders kind of thing. That's been solved a long ass time ago. Now, I will say this, more people should have been prosecuted. Way more people should have been prosecuted. Because they were using reservists and shit to run a prison that were clearly not trained. And I don't even understand how they could pass the psych evaluation. And a lot of people should have a lot of higher up people should have gotten more in trouble than this. And unfortunately, the way it works in the military is the same as the way it works in like the illicit drug industry. The people that take the most risk, that are lowest on the food chain, get the most punishment. That's always how that's been. But yeah, now these people, before they loved the military, now they hate the military. Before they liked minorities, now they hate minorities. You know, I see so many tweets of people talking about like, I'm going to just start calling up ICE on every brown person I see because Cubans voted for Trump, and it's like, okay, you're upset that minorities aren't a stereotype to you and they don't act the way you think they should act. Okay, that's good to know. Like, what I have noticed is a lot of people are talking about Latinos after this election where it's very obvious they've never met a Latino before. Like the idea that like a guy from like a third generation American who's a descendant from Mexico is going to naturally align themselves with an El Salvadorian illegal in the U.S. That's moronic. That's like saying somebody from France would basically feel a kinship to somebody from Moldova just because they're from the same continent. And I would argue that actually Mexico is North America, so that would technically not be the same El Salvador is close, but my whole point is you get a lot of people that are just like, well, they're brown, they should vote a certain way. It's like that's not how that works. The amount of just overt racism that's just like spouting out from these people is amazing to me. All it takes is one election, and then the hoods come out and the torches. I don't get these people that are pro-culture about anything that Nick Fuentes says. He's an internet troll. He's an internet troll. Like he's a homosexual aging twink. I don't think this man is possibly able to get aroused by women. So I don't think they have anything to worry about, at least from Nick Fuentes. He's one of those individuals I don't understand how he has a career in anything. I don't understand why people just don't laugh at him. They give him too much power by like just thinking that anyone listens to him. Again, this like these tweets here, this tweet that Pat's retweeting. This is so insulting. Gaza was already getting flattened. They're already getting flattened, and the Biden administration blanketly increased without any congressional oversight. We don't even go to the trouble of pretending that Congress is going to object to any of this shit. So like this idea that oh no, now that Trump is in charge, it's going to get even worse. No, no, it's not. It's going to get accelerated, but the same result is going to happen because American central policy, or I'm sorry, American foreign policy is based on the round that no matter whatever the hell Israel does, We will back them up, and there's nothing Israel can do. They attacked and killed our own sailors, and they got no repercussions. No repercussions. The, the military has whole internal reports on the USS Liberty incident. It's all well documented. And the U.S. military, we have to pretend that the way it was portrayed to the media was the way it happened, and it's insane. There's no other country on the planet where we have arrested and convicted more spies from than Israel. No other country. Like you gotta, if you combine Russia and China together, it's not even close. Not even close. And it doesn't matter. We just give them whatever the hell they want. And it doesn't matter how much problems it causes in the UN. It doesn't matter how much issues it causes internationally. It doesn't matter how much problems it causes in the region. It doesn't matter how many Americans get killed because of this policy. We just do it. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I don't think we should have anything to do with the Middle East. Let them all fight it out. And the idea, well, Russia and China are going to go in. No, Russia and China can't force the waste the money the way we have been. It's stupid. This is one of those things where it's like there are policies of Trump that I don't agree with necessarily. Like I obviously I am not a fan of the concept of tariffs. One, I don't think it's achievable, and two, even if they attempt to do it, it will be hugely disruptive to the U.S. economy. But there are other things where it's like America first, and we're not going to get involved in every goddamn conflict. We're going to pull inward. We're not going to I would be ecstatic if we just started closing military bases all over the world. There is no legitimate reason for us to maintain over 100 military bases overseas. There's just no reason. There is no reason. Now, again, like a lot of his promises, I have very little hope that he'll follow through with any of this stuff. Because Trump, at least to me, seems to have a remarkably short attention span, and there's no substance behind him. We'll see. That's the other thing. People are flipping out about the potential of a Trump presidency. Again, we've already had one. Nothing changed. Nothing markedly changed other than to make up the Supreme Court. And for 99.999999999% of Americans, it didn't affect you. Oh no. Europe is going to start taking care of their own messes. Good. Good. Please. We shouldn't be the world's police. We shouldn't. Like, if Europe wants to start taking care of their own shit, by all means. By all means. I mean, NATO's become a joke. It always has been, to be honest with you. Other than Estonia and Poland, for the most part, the rest of the NATO countries just completely ignored all the security commitments and everything. Just completely ignored it. Germany has been subsidized militarily by us for far too fucking long. And they're the ones that kept going behind our backs and making deals with Russia. But then, of course, the whole Nord Stream thing, which since they even announced they were going to build that, pissed off the United States. This occurred well before Trump, and it pissed off all the eastern countries between Germany and Poland, or Germany and Russia. And everybody warned them about it. And at the end of the day, Germans only care about Germany. That's always how it's been. And it's like, because we don't have to worry about anyone else, America will fix it. So fine. Let Europe start leading the way. We'll see how quickly they get sick of it. 15 million people are rounded up in concentration camps. Pat, we already had holding centers for illegals and stuff. We've already had that. They expanded under Obama. We already have legal slavery in the prison industrial complex. We're one of the only countries that it's written into our laws to where you can be forced to work for free if you're in a prison. Like pretty much all this shit he said is already happening. COVID, I couldn't get a clean hotel room to save my fucking life. And I'm still running into this now. or you can't regularly get your hotel room clean and shit. I don't know what he's talking. This is a prime example of how sheltered Patrick is. He's a very, very sheltered white guy. It's kind of like when he talks about the cops fucking with him. I shouldn't say the cops are necessarily fucking with him, but when the cops respond to a police call, and Pat expects that they should immediately defer to him every time there's a swatting incident. And it's like, it really comes off to me where Pat is upset that he's treated as a white man the same as an African American would be treated. I mean, it's just I'm not a fan of swatting at all. I think it's illegal. I think people should immediately go to prison for it. I legitimately believe 5 years, boom, no early out, no probation, hardcore federal penitentiary. But at the end of the day, like the way Pat handles it is just so over the top and goofy. And it's amazing to me how protected he is. By the way, he's a fat, doughy white guy that he doesn't have to worry about a cop icing him or just breaking his fucking jaw. Because for me, as a really tall guy who's deaf with facial scarring and scars up and down my right arm and missing fingers, I interact with the cops at like a sporting event, and I can already tell that the guy's got short man syndrome and he wants to try to make an example out of me in front of my wife and my kid. It's a different world for us. And when I say us, I mean people not like Pat. People aren't sheltered and protected from reality and stuff. Anywho, it's 7:30. Let's see, is it? And it's still pitch black because I'm in the Arctic North. I don't even know when the hell sunrise occurs here. I'm going to go down to the lobby, try to get a cup of coffee, and figure out what I'm doing for breakfast. I don't know what's open on a Sunday this early. Well, wait, what day of the week is it? It's Saturday. Okay. So I'm going to try to see what's open on a Saturday on a pitch black dark morning here in Alaska. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you all take care of each other. Everybody just calm the fuck down. This is stupid. This is just stupid how emotional people are getting on both sides. On both, like anyone that's like, oh, look at these liberals, they're all freaking out. I'm like, you guys are just as fucking cringe. You're acting like your daddy Trump is gonna like somehow solve all your problems and shit. It's like it's not gonna happen. Because again, at the end of the day, none of us are important enough to where whoever the president is directly affects our lives. Just doesn't happen. Really, I don't even think he's gonna fucking increase deportations. I don't think he's gonna do shit. I think he's gonna get in the White House and just brain rot. He's just as fucking cognitively gone as fucking Biden is. So it's like, what do you fucking think's gonna happen? Nothing's gonna happen. That's how it always is. Y'all take care. Ciao.